Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Crypto News Podcast. We're buzzing as always, and I'm super pumped to have today's guest on the show. We have Alex Connolly, the CTO and co-founder of Immutable, also known as ImmutableX. Alex has been passionate about in-game assets his entire life, and one of the crazy stories I've ever heard, at the age of 9, this lad wrote scripts to gather pricing data from the RuneScape Grand Exchange. And at 13, he was the top contributor to the largest TF2 item pricing website in the world. Alex invented the most scalable system for creating NFTs ever designed, which has been used to create millions of Gods Unchained cards with no impact on the Ethereum network. Alex graduated high school as the highest ranked student in Australia. A couple years later, he joined Immutable after dropping out of a combined computer science and law degree at the University of Sydney, where he was building a blockchain agnostic programming language for smart contract VMs. Super pumped to have this guy on the show. Alex, it's been a while. Can't wait. And here we are. Welcome to the show. Pumped to have you on.
Thank you very much, and excited to be here.
We got to start with the RuneScape story, man. That is absolutely bananas. I used to rip RuneScape back in the day as well. I think that was like the first game that I really sort of a peer-to-peer game that I started playing. I want to say I was in like grade 4, maybe younger than that, maybe grade 3. All the boys and the gals got into it. It was like a school-wide thing in the schoolyard. You know, you'd be kicking the ball around, shooting hoops, playing hockey, doing whatever, and talking about RuneScape. How the hell did you write scripts to gather pricing data to build this massive exchange at the age of 9? That is absolute bananas. I want to know everything about it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't want to claim, I think any sort of like technical, genius level contribution here. I think I had a very similar experience, which is, hey, a whole bunch of friends, we were all playing RuneScape. We loved the game. We loved talking about it, trading. Sort of, I remember people would get membership, and I would sort of do chores to be able to pay the $7 a month or whatever it was. And I think the Grand Exchange, I somehow convinced my parents that RuneScape was like an educational game, and so I was able to play it quite a lot, which obviously you needed to in a sort of a fairly grindy MMO. And obviously with the Grand Exchange, there were like new things that I'd never really seen in any of the games that I played previously, which was the opportunity to trade items, the opportunity to make money. And like I said, I needed to make money inside the game so that I could do more things inside the game. And I think that led really naturally into there were graphs, so you could track the prices of different types of commodities over time. You could see the prices of wools and the prices of expensive items. And basically the question that was there for me was, I would like to make more money in this game. What's the easiest way to do it? And so I just started going on Google, looking up things, and sort of like eventually that turned into like a little system for myself to track prices and make decisions based on that sort of stuff. I don't think, looking back on it, I think now having spent a lot of time in professional software engineering, I don't think I was doing anything magic, but I think it definitely spoke to like just how much people care about these economies, even from like a really young age, are willing to put, you're putting your time into it, you're putting your energy into it, you're putting like your thought into it, you're really trying to build the best type of things that you can build. And I think that's what there was so much depth to that game and economy. And obviously I think that, having that experience when you're so young definitely sticks with you about the power of in-game item trading.
You got to give yourself some credit. You were 9 years old, man. Like how did you even learn how to write script that young? Did you have, were one of your parents devs or software engineers? Were you just a big, Google everything guy?
I think a very funny part of this story is that both my parents are very sort of like, both sort of like humanities PhDs, like very like, maths, computer science, coding is not at all their thing, like no connection to it. Again, really it was super organic. It was, I had a very real problem that needed to be solved, which was like, how am I going to be able to try and make more money on the Grand Exchange? And that led to Googling, to look at RuneScape's APIs, to look at what other people had done in the space previously. I don't think I really had this magic, I knew exactly what was going on all the time, but I could see what other people had done. I could work out how the functions were working. I could change things. Just where there's a will, there's a way. And I think even, you talk about, being a certain age or anything like that, ultimately, if you really want to make these things happen, I'm sure you'd see, if you go look at the Roblox economy today, you'd see a ton of 9-year-olds trying to build games or trying to make money in those economies. Like, it's just when there's like that really strong connection and motivation to a particular problem, and you can get away with It doesn't have to be perfect system design. It can be a bit hacky, and it can just sort of like not work. And the amazing thing about being 9 is you have a lot of free time, right? And so you can sort of struggle through it until things work out.
Grind at school, come home, and build a RuneScape Grand Exchange. Just crazy. Wow. How nice was your setup in RuneScape? You must have had a pretty nasty setup.
Yeah, no, I think I was pleased that I got to. I think definitely where I got to after a few years, I sort of stopped playing after a while. And I think I played some more like games that were a little bit less grindy. And then maybe when I was about 14 or 15, it had a bit of a resurgence, right, at high school. And I was like, oh, guys, like, I've been here before. And so we're able to relive some of the glory days a little bit. But I think I was definitely, I'll say when we talk a little bit later about the Steam ecosystem, I was definitely sort of like financially more invested in that ecosystem for sure.
What a crazy story. And then you graduate high school as the equal highest ranked student in Australia. That's quite an honor. Congrats on that. And you take a very admirable degree, a combined degree in computer science and law, and decide to drop out.
Yeah.
Clearly was the right choice in the long run, but like I'm sure your parents were, up your derriere about it. I'm sure your whole network and support system was like, is this the right choice? Walk me through that whole scenario.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is you've got to control the messaging here. So at the time, I didn't say I was fully dropping out of uni. I was deferring uni for a semester to go and work on this. I could always come back and do it. And I think that's an awesome thing, which is there are so many opportunities out there, particularly in computer science, where you're able to like, A, you can get jobs without degrees, B, you can just build things in public, and if people like them, they'll use them. Or if people will see the body of work that you've done, and that matters as well as obviously a formal education.
So you were always interested in gaming models, gaming economies, peer-to-peer economies. I feel like RuneScape and just sort of gaming as a whole must have kickstarted that whole love for you. Like, was there another sort of aha moment, or did this just seem like play from day one?
Yeah, I think RuneScape definitely kickstarted that for me. But I think where it really became a more of a direct obsession was definitely in the days of sort of Steam item trading for me. Right, so I got very into games like Team Fortress, Counter-Strike. I played at a fairly like competitive level for particularly Team Fortress here in Australia. And what that sort of produced was a recognition that these economies could be worth a lot of money, and there were millions of dollars changing hands. People were having like huge economic decisions. You mentioned in the bio, which I'm not sure where you got, but that's it's a good story. Like I was very dedicated to like trying to make the TF2 economy in particular work better. Whether that was like pricing suggestions for rare items, there was sort of a period of like great change in the economy. It was just so interesting all the time. There was like all these things happening, and I was playing the game a lot, so that gives you like this sort of like connection to it. And hey, you eventually trade up to a particular item and you can wear it, and that's cool. But actually, They reached a point where I wasn't doing as much trading as I had anymore. I was just really interested in like either building tools or like contributing to things, or like writing big, long, sort of like nerdy blog posts on, the way that the economy was going and what things I thought that Valve should change, like those types of things. And I think it just always struck to, like growing up through that context of like tradable items in video games gives you a background to really sort of like see the huge importance of this to people's lives. Like, there was never a doubt for me. Yeah.
No, it's so true. Do you mind? I'll take a stab at it as well, but just in case any listeners aren't familiar with Steam, Steam is what, the largest game marketplace on desktop? Yeah.
So Steam is basically exactly as you put it, like the biggest sort of like game desktop. It's sort of like a developer platform, so it's got a bunch of features for game developers, but also sort of an aggregator distribution model where people will publish their games into the store. They'll sort of manage sales for you, and they've built a bunch of tools for developers, which include things like there's a marketplace where you can sort of take and trade your assets with each other. Right? That marketplace has got some challenges. So the first is Steam takes a 15% cut on all the trades, which makes it very hard to sort of like find profitable trading strategies. Right. The second is when you're selling, you're not selling for real money, right? You're selling for Steam dollars, so you can only go and you can spend that on games or reinvest it in, but you don't get real money. There are all sorts of sort of other restrictions. It doesn't support a lot of types of trading. There are lots of like more complex or complete things that aren't available to you. But even then, I think like a really classic one is there used to be all these websites where you could trade items for real money. But the way that it worked was basically you had a sort of a middleman that would sit in between. You'd pay the middleman $10,000 or something. You'd send your other item to the middleman, and they would make the switch, right? Because you couldn't do real item for money in one atomic transaction, so you had to sort of rely on someone in the middle. And obviously, this system had some problems. But we sort of set up a reputation system where you could like, if someone didn't scam you as a middleman, you'd like give them reputation, and like they would use that, like maybe you paid a pass-through fee and people didn't want to risk their reputation. But eventually, the amount of money would get too much, or like someone would run off and there'd be a big scandal. Like, and we sort of built this whole economy built on like, I would say fairly shaky ground, but obviously taking advantage of Steam's massive distribution, the fact that all these games were so popular and had existing player bases meant that it really was the ecosystem where the most items were being traded even then.
Does Steam have any Web3 games at the moment?
No, so Steam doesn't have any Web3 games. I think there are a couple of games which you can publish, which like do have like a version that's available through Steam. But Steam actually in general have been sort of like fairly anti-NFT generally. I think they've looked at that as like A, partly competitive to that marketplace style product, right? And B, just like something that they can be, they have essentially a monopoly on desktop gaming distribution. Right. Obviously, the Epic Games Store has been stepping in there. They've been a bit more friendly to NFTs because they're looking for distribution and they're looking to be a challenger to Steam. But so far, Steam have been relatively reticent to roll out to like substantial support for Web3 games.
I feel like Steam's one of those brands that a lot of boomers wouldn't even be cognizant of, but it's a multi-billion-dollar company, and so front of mind and important and powerful to the younger generations.
Yeah, I think they have like some absolutely crazy stats, both in terms of like the size and the growth of the business, but also like in terms of how sticky those users are. I think they're like monthly active users to daily active users is like 50%. Like so, half of the people who use it every month use it every day. Right. So like crazy numbers about how like, people love gaming, right? And Steam has positioned themselves super well to like, lead and dominate that market on desktop.
Especially with the prominence of streaming. And like, it's pretty darn difficult to stream anything mobile. So you got these younger kids, and these kids are making so much bloody money. It's absolutely crazy. I just wonder like, I wish I was not, of course everyone wishes they'd be younger because then you get to, live more life. But if I was 15 years younger, man, and you could put me in front of a TV with not a care in the world and no job, no need to put food on the table or do anything like that, and just be cranking out content all day. These young kids, they literally just chat. Which Steam game should I play today? Fire up a game and boom, it's off. It's crazy. That leads us into Web3. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Hot take. Are there any Web3 games that are like ready and poised to be a very like wide scale streamable game? Do you have any on your radar at the moment?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think some of the Web3 games, like where we really are Web3 games, is almost like there's a big wave of what I call sort of like, almost Web3 mini games, right? So things that you could play on browser, like, you could buy the assets, but really the game itself wasn't very fun. And it's a fairly like core reason for that, which is that building fun, streamable games takes a long time and a lot of money, right? Like if you actually want to see, strong games come to market. I think 3 ones that I'm excited about for sure. Like people can go and play Gods Unchained, which is a game that we make here at Immutable today. Right? Okay. We have people who stream that with decent followings. I think I'm really excited for Illuvium launch, which should be sometime in Q1. Right? We'll see exactly when that happens. Ask Kieran and the Illuvium community. Don't ask me. But I think that we've played that, particularly the Auto Battler. Like there's just really cool stuff going on there. I think that will start to be like crossing not just the threshold of streamability, but also the threshold of like, is this actually a game that is going to like attract a mainstream player base who are playing it not because of like there's a crazy strong financial incentive, but because hey, we like the game and the trading is a benefit on top of that. I think there are other strong Web3 games, but they're more in the mobile genre, right? So things like Guild of Guardians, etc. I think those ones are ones where you probably won't see as much streaming activity, but I'm very excited about them as well.
Web3 as a whole is obviously it's been quite the year. It's been an absolute shit show to say the least, but I've seen a lot of really interesting takes regarding the transition and sort of the timeline of free to play back in 2005 to 2010, and comparing that to, I'm not going to say play to earn because I think play to earn's dead. And it's just Web3 gaming, right? Yep. The Gen Pop has realized that playing a game for financial incentives is just counterintuitive. The whole point of playing a game is to have fun, shoot the shit with your friends, create memories. It's not to make money. And Web3's finally figured that out. But free to play was literally, it was fully dismissed, and it was just a fad by the Gen Pop from like 2005 to 2010. And now almost every big game, with the exception of your like Call of Duties and FIFAs and whatnot, it's all free to play. Like your Fortnites, even your War Zones, right? It's just, that's the name of the game now, especially with all the mobile games. Do you think Web3 gaming is going the same sort of transition and timeline? Do you think in a couple of years, we'll just be like, wow, we should have seen this coming?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something we look at as a success metric, like here at Immutable. We don't think that every single game needs to be a Web3 game, but we think when people like really have in their minds, hey, there's two different ways that I can own this item, right? I can own this item and it's a centralized thing in a database and I can't do anything with it, or I own this item and I can sell that or trade that. And like that impacts my purchasing decision, like how much I'm willing to pay for that, right? How, like what my attitude to the game is, like getting to the point where people just have that internalized model as like, oh, this game is different from other games, or these items in this game are different from items in other games. That will be a very powerful point. But I think pointing at prior examples, I mean, it's not just free-to-play gaming. Like I think we've seen the same thing happen like 4 times with mobile gaming, right? It just initially dismissed as like, gimmicky games that weren't very fun, and like desktop gaming would always be better, graphics-wise and things like that. Now it drives the majority of revenue to the industry. Things like social games, right? So very like, true. Some of the like, or like hyper casual, like I sort of, and that's not to say, hey, just because people dismiss it, therefore it's going to be successful. I think there are lots of things that haven't been as successful. What I will say though is I think that people who are too dismissive of areas of innovation like this, I think are not looking at the history of the gaming industry, where we have areas where there's like substantial new potential value for players and substantial new opportunities for game design, innovation, monetization design, innovation. Yep. Like what we want to do is put the tools in the hands of, like we don't think that, us at Immutable, we don't think that we're going to design the one and only perfect game, the one and only perfect economy. We want to put better tools in the hands of the people who make great games, the best game designers in the world. New tools equals new ways for people to have fun, equals new ways for people to realize the value of their assets. I think that's going to create that same type of movement where for a while, the games are small and gimmicky and everyone's like, this isn't going to work. And then the games get better. Now suddenly it's not a gimmick, but like, wow, that actually is quite powerful for users.
This is fun.
And I think for me, coming from that background of like seeing people trade items in video games, seeing all the problems there, like seeing the challenges of being, and even with all those problems, seeing how much depth and engagement they added to those games. Now doing that when it's like the trading can be 10x better and more powerful, and those economies can be better built and designed. That's a really powerful story. I think we just have to wait for there to be the tooling necessary to make those games successful, and the game designers and game teams who actually leverage those tools in such a way as to create like long-term, sustainable, successful games rather than things that are sort of like a flash in the pan.
That's literally exactly what you guys are doing at Immutable. You guys are building the tech stack for incredible game studios, developers, creators, makers, so on and so forth, that just come and work their magic and build beautiful games. And it's crazy seeing you guys. The run you've been on is just incredible. Congrats, by the way. Well, it's maybe it's a little too early to say congrats, but literally it's insane. And when you think of brand recognition and just like what Web3 brands have a very solid track record and just really do good, like you guys are pretty close to the top of the food chain. Like, you know what I mean? When you think of Immutable, you're like, these guys don't fuck around. They ship incredible software for game developers and are just a net positive for Web3 as a whole. Like that must be a pretty good feeling.
Yeah, I mean, definitely appreciate it. I think always, we internally are always really critical of ourselves, thinking about what can we be doing better to make life better for Web3 games. Like, I think we definitely are. Maybe I won't express it in terms of like pride for what we've done so far, but like we really feel the responsibility of like we think we have such a great experience in both building Web3 games and building the platform for Web3 games that if we're able to execute on that mission, we're going to be able to set up an entire industry for success. Right? And also we can be people who like actually take Web3 games and put them in people's hands. Our big thesis around like, hey, why do some people like Web3 games? Some people are very anti them. Everyone's got opinions on theoretical concepts. When you actually give someone a game that they want to play and say, okay, now you bought that skin in Fortnite. Now you can sell it. Previously you couldn't sell it at all. Now you can sell it for $5. Right? Put that in someone's hands and suddenly they get it. And I think us sort of providing the infrastructure to do that and just honestly being there, being consistent, having it like a strong, sustainable business, making sure that we, have integrity around the way that we deal with our partners and our customers. That's been a really long-term successful strategy for us. And we hope it's going to be the way that we always operate.
Love that. Alex, we're going to take a quick break. And when we get back, we are going to talk about your crazy partnerships with a couple big names, GameStop, TikTok, ever heard of them? But until then, got to give a huge shout out to Prime XPT, our sponsor of the show. I've been using Prime XPT for a hot minute and absolutely love it, as they offer a robust trading system for both beginners and professional traders. It doesn't matter if you're a rookie or a vet, you can easily design and customize your layouts and widgets to best fit your trading style. Prime XPT is also running an exclusive promo for listeners of the Crypto News podcast. You get 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account by using the promo code CryptoNews50. That's CryptoNews50, all one word, to receive 50% of your deposit credited to your trading account. Now back to the show with Alex. You guys have been on just a partnership rampage over the last year, like absolute banana lands, just big name after big name after big name, more big names. A couple that stand out are GameStop and TikTok. These are behemoth Web2 companies that we're talking about. I'm sure you sat in, you're the co-founder of the company, you're the current CTO. What do those boardroom meetings sound like, look like, feel like? Must have, had a couple butterflies, getting in a room with the big dogs from companies like GameStop and TikTok. Like, why? It makes sense, but why are they so interested in you guys? Why are you interested in them? Tell me more about these partnerships and how they came to fruition.
Awesome. I mean, what I'll say about these partnerships is I think what these partnerships are driven for, like you talk about being in the boardroom together, like one thing that we've been really excited by is our sort of internal timeline that we had in our heads for like, hey, when will big mainstream businesses or like AAA game studios, we probably talked to all of them, what's their timeline for coming in here? And we sort of had that pushed out, by even a couple of years from now. And obviously, like, the boom in NFTs over the course of 2021 and early 2022 definitely accelerated lots of those timelines, which was awesome for us. We were scrambling to react in many cases just at the growth of the industry and how fast these partnerships were coming on board. I think what we were excited about across the board was that these companies were genuinely interested in building cool things in Web3. Right? These companies move at different speeds. They're not a startup. Right? They're not going to sort of like immediately go and pivot the entire business to focus on it. Right? They've got existing customer bases, very strong revenue propositions, huge internal teams. But right at the highest levels of both businesses, right, we actually talking there about TikTok and GameStop, there was strong appetite for what we could do in Web3 and how Web3 can solve challenges for those businesses. That's really meaningful. Right? What we've done with GameStop, we've built an NFT marketplace together. You can go and check that out at nft.gamestop.com. And that's going to be a continuing big stream of business for them where they are able to basically monetize the audience that they have, but also the amazing access to content that they have, IP partnerships, like finding ways to connect to that audience, and also just offering a place to trade game items. So they're super excited about all the stuff that's both live at the moment and what's coming up. Right? And I think definitely I really recommend checking out what that business is doing. Obviously, on the TikTok side, things have been like really, really interesting. We did a collaboration with a bunch of their top creators back in late 2021, where we basically sort of ran auctions for some one-on-one NFTs. We also did a bunch of like higher mint volume NFTs, and we've been talking with them ever since about basically like what are the ways where NFTs can add strong value at big scale to that product. Are there opportunities for NFTs to be more integrated? I think what we have seen is that sort of a lot of people have dipped their toes into the water and done initial collections, sort of like early things to get a feel for the space. I think when we have, when things come around for the second time, what we're really going to be seeing is more like now these businesses understand NFTs substantially more than I think they did at the time of like the sort of like peak mania. I think what they're really going to look to do next time is like, how can we do a widespread, sustainable integration of NFTs into these products? Like we're seeing with, things like Instagram at the moment or things like Reddit, like these types of long-term sustainable integrations that are going to form part of their like ongoing business model. That's super exciting for us, of course.
On the tech side, which I'm so interested in, on the tech side of ImmutableX, like as CTO, walk me through sort of the day-to-day with your team. And I know you can't give me the whole secret sauce, but like, do you guys work on sprints? How long are they? What KPIs do you guys have? How often are you shipping? How do you prioritize what to ship? Like, I know you got a massive team under you. How do you ship so much gold? Like that, this can't be easy.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely say we want to be shipping more. We want to go, always faster and ship better things. I'll say, I think one thing that people sometimes expect, some of the surprises people, is that actually a lot of our engineering processes and culture look fairly similar to like a standard software scale. Like fortnightly sprints, right? We have sort of like leadership, design, product, and engineering triads on our teams. We have like, midterm roadmaps and visions. Like a lot of that stuff is really familiar. What we have to sort of balance as Immutable is a really interesting balance. We have to balance like Web3 innovation and a lot of like really core in the technical details, like strong work with like making sure our customers have access to the latest roll-up technology and things like that. With a lot of, hey, we also need to be able to deliver a developer platform at scale to, if you're delivering things to games, like any one game, if it goes and becomes successful, instantly millions of customers. And making sure that you have products that are going to be scalable, reliable, well integrated by developers. Right? There's a lot of like sort of, we see ourselves bridging the gap between sort of Web3 and Web2 infrastructure. There's a lot of engineering work that we do that actually is more traditional, because if all you ever do is ship things that are on the Web3 innovation side, you won't have effectively solved the actual problem that many of your customers have. And for us, that's like, hey, how can we help these game studios build great Web3 games? A lot of these people don't have deep Web3 experience. They have to sort of like come along that journey. They have to have things abstracted for them. They have to have the right problems. But at the same time, that doesn't mean diluting all of the things that make Web3 great, diluting things like self-custody. Like we have to be capable of sort of like bringing these benefits into this context. And we spend a lot of our engineering time figuring out the right balance of, hey, here's cutting edge innovation and here's delivery mechanisms that are going to like scale, be reliable, actually deliver customer value. We have to put a lot of time into things like product management, where it comes to like, I think one challenge for us is there are so many things that you could do in the NFT ecosystem, right? There's so many things you can even do in the gaming ecosystem.
What do you focus on? Yeah.
We have to be like really ruthless with our prioritization to make sure we're solving the actual most important problems for our customers. And that's honestly something we get wrong all the time. If you're one of our customers listening to this, I hope like keep giving us feedback and we'll make sure we dial it in future. Like this is a really interesting, innovative space. And I spend as much of my time on product as I do on tech for sure.
Of all the pieces of software that you guys have shipped, what's been the most difficult? I feel like the marketplace has to be up there.
Yeah, definitely marketplace. I think probably like there's some really cool stuff that we have, which I think is somewhat differentiating for us. Like obviously sort of like the Zika rollup engine, but also things like supporting a global order book and a global exchange backend. So we do a lot of things where it's basically like if your marketplace wants to integrate with us, we can make it easier to build many NFT marketplaces as we do with people like GameStop, or like I think we announced Nifty Gateway today, people like Rarible, people like OpenSea, like offering software to them that's going to work performantly at scale, where you're dealing with people's money and, I saw this item on this marketplace and someone else bought it off that marketplace at the same time. Lots of fun, interesting challenges there. Obviously combining that with, we've worked with Starkware, one of the best teams in the space on the scaling side, right, to make sure that the roll-up tech that backs that is efficient, performant, resilient to things going wrong, all those types of things. Some really fun technical challenges for sure.
Do you have a non-obvious answer for me to the $1 million question, which is like, how can we onboard, the next million, or I believe your guys' goal is 3.5 billion, which is sort of the current total gamers in the world right now. But do you have any non-obvious answers to the question besides the classic, like, build beautiful Web3 games that look and feel like Web2 games, don't scam, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. Well, maybe the right way for answering this is like, I think I can talk specifically about the delta of like what's stopping people building really good Web3 games. I think there are a few things. I think wallets and payments sort of combined are a big problem. Like that onboarding experience, that is an ongoing challenge for most people. And I think a lot of the trade-offs that people like are solving that with, like, okay, but then we just sort of like, each game is going to centralize, like they're going to run their own backend, which stores all the user wallets for that game, but those wallets aren't going to be portable to any other game. Like some of the solutions that people in Web3 think are like, oh, that's a really easy solution. We just plug and play this. Like there's lots of benefits you lose by doing that, but also there are lots of like actual UX challenges that when you really map out the whole way to build an ecosystem are really thorny to solve. I think we're going to need good solutions for that sort of like onboarding, payments, taking the same wallet to multiple games. Right. If I've got $10 in my Call of Duty account, like the idea that like, oh, of course that's not available in my Fortnite account, like, it doesn't make any sense to people. And I also think there's lots of challenges on ramps. We need more, we need better, we need lower fees, we need more currency options. Like just everything that is there is really finicky. I think the other thing that we probably need if we're going to onboard gamers through games is sustainable game design that actually makes sense to people. I think the sort of like onboarding people we talked about, play to earn earlier, like our view is like there is a place for, and it was like, okay, can we play and earn? The way that we see this type of thing is like the idea of rewarding players with a stake in bootstrapping a game, I think is really valuable. You know, like the first million users of Facebook provided much more value to Facebook than users 1 billion to 1 billion and 1 million, right? Like the bootstrapping of that network effect, so you'd have some people to talk to, is really valuable. Sharing that piece of the pie with the players who make that possible is a really cool incentive. There are also things where we see like, you know, at the moment, most games companies, the way that they do their like, you know, the way that they do customer acquisition is by spending a really large amount of money on Facebook ads. I'm not sure, it's not just Facebook, but like all social ads. I think one thing that people don't understand about the mobile games industry who don't work in mobile games is in particular, right, the margins, of course, of selling things like in-game currency or skins, etc. You have a fixed cost to build the game, and then it's sort of like, you have a live ops cost, which is quite variable, or at least a little bit variable. Then you have very high margins selling of these in-game items, right? But these games actually run on relatively thin margins because what happens is you basically have to pump all of your money into Facebook ads, right? And I'm using it as a proxy, right? And you sort of do that until $1 spent on Facebook ads. If it converts to $1.10 in in-game spend indefinitely, amazing business, right? If it converts to 99 cents, you're broke, right? And so finding, you know, people are constantly optimizing these ads. They're sort of like finding they're like increasing how well the game monetizes for every time they convert a customer, like customer lifetime value, like all those types of things. It's a very optimized industry, very data-driven. Converting some of that spend, which at the moment just ends up in the pockets of large social companies, to like, hey, we're paying people directly to use these games. There's probably a lot of fat to be made there, right? I think just like straight up handouts to play games is probably not the right way to do it, but some degree of sharing value with people, I think, as a replacement for ad spend, customer acquisition cost, very interesting, right? I think the sort of like the second prerequisite is people figuring out the right designs for those economies that are not sort of like quick cash grab and then we're out, and are not, okay, we're going to like sort of set it up for a very Ponzonomics, like we need more players all the time or the economy is going to fall over. Like actually having economies that onboard people who want to play the game, who actually get exposed to Web3 as, wow, wasn't that cool? I just got to sell my asset for money, right? Not as opposed to like the only reason I'm playing this game is I'm playing it on 20 phones at once and I'm playing it because this pays more than like my regular job in a developing world country. That is not, I think, a good system that's going to be sustainable for
Never
web.
was.
And also it's just a terrible, like, you know, I think it's not very fun. Like it's just not a sustainable future for games.
That was a great little tangent there. I will definitely be re-listening to that one. Another thing that's crazy too is when you build a game, like you're really just throwing a dart at the board and hoping it hits. You know, like you put millions and millions of dollars into a game to hope to create this game economy where people have enough fun so you be profitable. Like that's another sort of aspect where it's got to be one of the highest risk, highest reward industries out there. Like it's bananas.
Yeah, for sure. And this is what we call sort of like things that are like idiosyncratically risky is sort of the way that people describe it, right? Which is there's no magic formula for making a hit game. That's not to say it's like fully dartboard, right? I think there are lots of things that are like, okay, you're going to have to tick these preconditions or it's probably not going to be very fun. Games companies invest a lot. They release games in like certain markets, get testing, and they'll can the game, right? Like if the download rate in a test market in Eastern Europe or somewhere is not high enough, like major studios will kill games, right? It's a very data-driven industry. People take it super seriously. And there are ways of knowing other than just like, hey, we shipped a game, does it work or not? And also games are relatively capital intensive depending on the genre. So if you want to go out there and build like a AAA shooter or something like that, you know, now you can obviously take advantage of, you know, really strong engines, some template games, but it's going to cost you a lot of money to do all the art, like to create all the mechanics, to pay all the programmers. It's a big capital investment. And if you do that when you don't know the game's going to work, that's a big challenge. One problem that Web3 games have been like, I think interesting at solving is like, hey, it's an alternative funding mechanism for some of these games so they can underwrite some of those base layer costs and sort of stage it out. I think where that's dangerous for players is, hey, we don't know if the game's going to be successful, right? So if the game, you know, is sort of like selling in-game items to players relatively early on, the game goes on not to be successful,
good point.
Right? Then they've lost a lot of money, right? But obviously if the game is successful, then, you know, that can be like the player's going to have items to use in the game, and that's awesome. I think figuring out the right sort of balance of all those things is definitely something that games are still like, you know, experimenting with and working on. But also at the same time, people get into the games industry, it's a fundamentally creative industry. I think creative industries are ones where you never see the like, okay, you're not running a SaaS company where it's, okay, we sort of, we can measure our metrics all the way up. We're doing B2B sales. We go like, okay, it's like writing a novel or like, me releasing a rap song or something, right? Like maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. And if it doesn't, maybe I'll try again. And it costs me a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of money potentially to put it out. But people like want to give that creative energy of themselves to the world. And I think when you do anything creative, like you go and write a play, maybe everyone hates it, right? But if no one wrote plays, we'd be in a sadder world, right? So like, I think we just have to encourage creators to like, I think you've got to be okay with, hey, we made a game and people didn't like it. Let's learn from that.
Yeah.
Let's see what we did wrong and let's fix it.
Take another kick at the can. Alex, you're on a roll here. I want to learn a little bit more about Alex. What gets you going? Like, what do you do? Obviously you work your ass off, but what do you do outside of work? Like you a rugby guy, any soccer or football as our, I guess everyone else except North America calls it. You golf at all? Like, what do you do? What do you do to cool down and just sort of decompress?
Yeah, big sports guy. Love sports forever. I was born in New Zealand, though I moved over to Australia young enough that you won't hear any trace of the accent. But that I think means that rugby's in the blood. I still play.
Oh, yeah.
I'll still training at the gym, those sorts of things. But just love sport in general. Huge F1 fan. Also love football or soccer, American wise. Like we have a lot of sports here in Australia, rugby league, Australian rules. Like it's just a very sort of big cricket fan. Like I just love being in that, and I think definitely when you're working on something which is like as all consuming as A, building a startup, and B, just like being involved in the Web3 economy. Like you can go on Twitter and I'm sure something crazy will have happened by the time I get off this call. Like having that environment where you can like fully decompress is really important. Yeah. But also things that you do, like, I like love reading, love writing, love like, science fiction, philosophy, religion, like those types of subjects, like super interesting and exciting for me. I think you've got to have things that you can like fully throw yourself into outside of work, or it will be like, I think in this industry, like a real challenge.
So true. You're from New Zealand. Wow. That's on my bucket list, man. And you guys got some of the best golf in the whole planet. Like it literally looks like you're golfing on like another planet. You ever golf in New Zealand?
I've never golfed in New Zealand. I have golfed quite a bit in Australia, including up on Hamilton Island. Hamilton Island has a great course. But definitely crazy. The South Island of New Zealand, right? Just in general, like I was born in Dunedin, but I will say the South Island of New Zealand is like, whether you're golfing or not, if you're golfing, it's amazing, but also just in general, get the chance to go down, rent a car, like drive around, go to Queenstown, like go over to Milford Sound. Like there's so many amazing things to do on the South Island. Strongly recommend.
Love that, man. Alex, what a treat. Really appreciate you coming on. We got one more segment and then we'll wrap it up. It's called the Hot Take Factor. You and I both jump in. We put our shit kicking boots on, right up to the knees, maybe all the way up to the thighs. You're a rugby player. You probably got tree trunk legs, so yours, we might have to get some extra large ones there. But give me a couple Alex Connolly hot takes, only shit that you believe in that no one else does. Doesn't have to be crypto related, can be anything in life, health, wealth, happiness, politics, sports, nutrition, food, space, you name it. Give me a couple Alex hot takes to finish the show off.
Ooh, a couple of hot takes for this show. I think one thing that I'll definitely say is that too much crypto Twitter is actually not a good thing. Right. I think people spend a lot of time focusing on things that are like interesting. There are a lot of things that do not matter. And spending time like actually building and making things is usually much more important.
Always more important. Sorry, keep going.
In general, like I would encourage everyone to have more intentionality, right? Like actually deciding, hey, what do I want to do? You can do basically anything, right? But you can't do all things, and you also can't do anything if you're not willing to actually try and like, okay, I'm really going to put all of myself into this. Figuring out what the right thing is important, right? Also just picking something and getting started is also really important. I think most people sort of like let life happen to them a little bit too much, right? I think that's obviously, I think there are lots of challenges people face that make that more challenging, but even a little bit more of that will just make like a massive difference in terms of like actually being able to enjoy life a little bit more. So I strongly recommend that as well.
I love that. What a great way to finish. That's so true too. I also do a bit of reading and writing myself. And one of the things I always write down is offense over defense, and at your and I's age, I'm 27. I assume you're a similar age to myself. We got to be playing offense, man. maybe not you, because you grew Immutable, but unless you're set for life, you got to be playing, oh man, you got to be making shit happen. You can't sit back and wait for life come to you. And another good analogy, just to build on your point too, shout out my old hockey coach, Phil Wolfenden, back when he'd always tell this to all of our defensemen. In hockey, there's a play where like the D-man, the defenseman pinches down. It's a high risk, high reward play. And the worst thing you can do is start your pinch and then, stop and then backpedal, start skating backwards. And he would always go, boys, you can't be half pregnant. He's like, you're going to do something, don't half-ass it, go all in. You can't be half pregnant. So those two things always stuck with me. But Alex, you brought the noise, man. Really appreciate this. Had a blast. If I'm ever out in your neck of the woods, I would love to meet you in person, have a pint or a dozen. But until the next time, please let our listeners know where they can find you and Immutable online and on socials.
Perfect. I mean, immutable.com, @Immutable on Twitter. I'm @0x Connolly, spelled as it will be in the description, on Twitter.
Alex, thanks for coming on, man. A lot of fun. Really appreciate it. Last thing, what's on the whiteboard behind you? Any gold there? Should I be zooming in and snagging something?
Yeah, I did scan the whiteboard before we started to make sure there was nothing too things there. To say like we're always working to make your SDKs better, and I think there's some design stuff going on for the next version. So nothing that is too confidential for those who trying to get to alpha.
Love it, folks. What an episode with Alex Connolly, CTO and co-founder of Immutable. These guys are building the tech stack for Web3 gaming. If you're a developer, creator, gamer, or anything of the like, do go check them out. These guys are really moving and grooving. Alex brought the noise. We really appreciate him for coming on. To the listeners, thank you so much, guys. Appreciate you. To the team, love you guys. Thank you. Could not be doing this without you. And back to the listeners, keep on growing those bags and keep on staying healthy, wealthy, and happy. Bye for now, and we'll talk soon.